Weisenberg does a lot of work to keep it going. And of course, everybody knows Hawk. He expends so much to keep us on the air. And thanks to listener support, we are here and we are able to bring you truth. And that's the bottom line. We are not paid as hosts. We do not seek remuneration for anything that we do. And I'd like to touch on that for a second. We are not paid. That is something that everybody needs to realize. I am not paid. None of the hosts are paid. That means we are not bought off. The station is not federally funded. It is not bought off. So what you will hear here is the truth. And it's not a political agenda. It's not as to policy. It is not as to lawlessness or the illusion of law. I would not rather be anywhere else. I can tell you that. We are also simulcast on these changing times, as well as No Borders at Scottish Sovereigns on the Net as well. And it's been an amazing year so far. Tonight we've got special guests joining us later. So I will get right into what we do, bringing you the hard truth. And I know how hard it is to wrap your minds around sometimes, but we've all been there. And waking up means growing up. And Jesus said it best: when I was a child, I spoke as a child. Now we're adults here. It's time to stand up and face the truth, face reality, and be in reality at all times rather than living in the past tense or in consensus reality, buying concepts from the law merchant. Today at swampland.time.com, there's a report that the suicide rate among young veterans is soaring. The number of male veterans under 30 ending their own lives jumps by 44% in 2 years. Now, the suicide rate was already high enough. The male suicide rate across the globe is already high enough. This is a target. This is a pogrom. A pogrom. This is what you saw as genocide in Rwanda, the presentation of genocide. This is what you saw in Nazi Germany. Males are a target of policy and agenda, and that is a pogrom, targeting a gender or race or stock. Now, if you go to the etymology on gender, that means a stock, a new species, a race. And targeting any entitlement maintains genocide. Jews, Christians, Muslims, these things are all perpetrated by the United States Congress. These things are facilitated as presentations to get you to buy into it through the Central Intelligence Agency. This is a media presentation. The Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, is the production company of the United States Incorporated. Now, the rate of suicide for vets has gone up 44% in the last 2 years. A lot of these are not suicides, and a lot more are forced by Congress, by the actions of Congress, by the actions of the board of directors, by the actions of corporate counsel, by the actions of each county commission. They are in a commission state to perpetrate fourth-generation warfare, implying force and pressure upon mankind by which to generate revenue. And in that forced suicide, they're deriving death derivatives. If they implicate force against you in a foreclosure action, if they implicate force against you by terrorizing you, these are what the county commission directs, corporate counsel directs, and what the administration facilitates by which to generate revenue into attorney coffers, into congressional pockets. That is what the IRS is, Internal Revenue Service. A tax would be collected. Revenue is generated. Now, I don't tolerate these things. I don't know about our listeners at times. But if you do not stand now, this comes for you. These are the military members serving their countries that are being offed at horrifying rates. These are human beings. These are your brothers and sisters. These are your mothers and fathers. And they're leaving behind now orphan children that the state will gladly take over. This impedes their inheritance, of course, and that's what Congress wants. Every law is established, every legal mechanism, every court process, 28 U.S.C., is designed to interplead into your estate, to garner that inheritance before the heir can be made known. When they're killing you and they're killing your sisters and brothers and leaving orphan children on the estate, they are creating product, creating man in its own image. Those children growing up without fathers are going to run right into the arms of the state as their father. It's going to patronize that thing because it's lost. As humanity, it is your obligation to prevent these children from being lost. It is your obligation as human beings to go out and look for these lost sheep and find every last one. It is your obligation to hold Congress accountable for their works and actions. It is your obligation to hold the directors accountable for their works and actions. It is your obligation to hold the administrators accountable for their works and actions. Now, we won the case against them. This is being facilitated as we speak. But as we were speaking of on Thursday, you're still patronizing it. You're still calling it your father. You're still contracting with it. And you're allowing these things to occur. That will also not be tolerated. We talk about the lemmings following the Pied Piper. Now, if you look at the concept, lemmings running right over that cliff following the Pied Piper, what do you see? You see lemmings that are possibly on the front lines being pushed off that cliff by others who are following the Pied Piper. That will also not be tolerated. Now, you have an option to choose your side. That option is now. You need to make up your mind whether or not you're going to be patriotic to it or patriotic to yourself and your own house, protecting your own, protecting those around you, and limiting the ability of Congress to prey on you and your children. That being said, we do have good news, of course. WCFcourier.com, attorney sentenced in Wenatchee County in Decorah. David Strand of Decorah, former attorney, has been sentenced to 20 years for misappropriating client funds. How about that new surety in the chute? Now, that's not a human being. That's a psychopath attorney being used to generate revenue into attorney coffers. We've got Dunwoody.patch.com. Dunwoody attorney sentenced for scheme to fund campaign for Superior Court seat. Federal prosecutors say Michael Rothenberg persuaded owners of Winterhawk Energy to invest $1.35 million into a trust account that he ultimately used to fund his failed campaign for a seat on DeKalb County Superior Court. Dunwoody attorney Michael Rothenberg was sentenced Friday for defrauding investors and using their money to fund his political campaign for a seat on the DeKalb County Superior Court. Quote, the defendant committed fraud at the very time that he was asking the voters in DeKalb County to trust him, said United States Attorney Sally Quinlan Yates in a statement. Now he will spend some time in federal prison. Rothenberg, 36, was convicted last September and pleaded guilty. According to Yates, Rothenberg deceitfully persuaded the owners of Winterhawk Energy and Development Corporation to invest $1.35 million. Rothenberg told him the money would be placed in a trust account controlled by him, which would be used to fund the trading of notes by large financial institutions. Now, did you hear that one? It's a public utility company trafficking in human beings that just rolled on an attorney. That is the epitome of political cannibalism. Beautiful to see. From LancasterOnline.com, former Lancaster County detective charged with homicide has many local ties. It goes on to give this disparaging report on this FBI agent. Detectives are normally trained at Quantico. They're not called FBI agents, but they are usually trained at Quantico and acting on behalf of the federal state, by which to teach other law enforcement cops that were not trained at Quantico, such as CFR or 27 CFR 72.11 commercial crimes. So go out and get it, boys. Go out and privateer. Okay, so the heads are being taken out here. I said in years past, he was already convicted of stealing coins from a drug bust. Yada, yada. Lancaster City Mayor Rick Gray, a former defense attorney who represented the Willow Street marijuana grower, said Edmondson had a reputation even before the charges against him became public. Now, more than 12 years after being paroled, now he was still an officer, still a detective. The Edmonton 43 is facing a murder charge in western Pennsylvania. Indiana County investigators allege Edmondson shot and killed 62-year-old Frank Petro on Tuesday inside Petro's sportsman's store. Investigators said the killing might have been part of an extortion plot. No, that's what cops do. That's what federal agents do. And this guy is being used as a fall guy. I'm happy to see this. I'm very, very sad to see that the a human victim was made victim of this schematic. I'm not sad to see a detective taking the fall for the rest of the FBI agents, but they'll be falling shortly as well. It's just whoever gets there first at this time under political cannibalism. So here he was, a cop, a detective, shaking down a local business, just like normal. The privateers, that's what privateers do. And he got caught. That's good that he's being used as a surety. PostGazette.com. Pennsylvania's really shaken up here. Pittsburgh police officer charged with driving drunk to work. Acting police chief Regina McDonald placed a Pittsburgh police officer on administrative leave after he was arrested last Friday night for driving drunk to work. The second time in 2 years he's faced criminal charges. Isn't this interesting that they were still officers even after their criminal charges 12 years ago? Felonies, by the way. These are very interesting to watch here and see what's coming down the pike. And everybody was asking about Rocco. Lately, Rocco's great. He seems to be on vacation, so we'll update everybody on his status, possibly if he can get on Facebook, hopefully soon. There was a sad attempt by attorneys to say that being a lawyer is not lucrative business. On BusinessInsider.com this week, quote, "I consider law school a waste of my life and an extraordinary waste of time." Yeah, human trafficking is not that lucrative anymore, sadly. The water situation in, I think it's West Virginia here. Let me go pull that up. That was very concerning for me this week because not only have they dumped chemicals in the water for everybody to be poisoned with, of course, they cut the funding for the cleanup of these things. And also what concerns me is that the Red Cross might be on scene at this time. Now, the Red Cross is a founding hospital. That thing was established in 1864 by the Geneva Convention of 1864, and it picks up prisoners of war. So if you are aligning with it and consenting to it, you are being picked up as a prisoner of war by the Red Cross. So please don't consent. Find other alternatives, family members, community members, gather together and help each other out rather than patronizing that thing that's going to use you to the fullest extent as a use. They're saying in West Virginia, Charleston, West Virginia, several organizations have set up water stations for West Virginia American water customers impacted by a do not use order. Now, again, these stations don't sign anything, don't contract, and personally, if you show up at one of those stations, you might want to test the water and see what's in it. Fluoride, that's one of the poisons that they like to use to make you sicker. Mercury content of water, all of these things, don't trust them. And make sure that you're testing any and all bottled water that you might be forced to be drinking, because we know that it's city water. It has fluoride in it. If it doesn't have fluoride in it when it's at the source, they add fluoride to it. It's just safer and much, much easier if you get your own filters. And I don't advertise for anybody, but I personally use the Berkey. I like that, and I like the water. So that is something that everybody needs to look out for, especially during these cold days and times when the Red Cross would be around. Please don't contract with it. Let me see here. I know that we'll have a guest in a little bit. Sorry I'm so slow, folks, tonight. I'm kind of slow going here. This last week I was going to read the Enabling Act of 1933. So while I have time, I'm going to do that in English. Law to remedy the distress of the people and the Reich. Now, in 1928, one of the people came in to indemnify Poland, and that person was the Bear Corporation in the 1928 Company of Churzow case. And that's what sparked Nazi Germany. It was corporate influence, corporate governance. And they had, maintained that, well, our overhead is too great, so we need to offset it by culling populists. And so now here we are at 1933, Enablement Act. And I want everybody to hear that word, Enablement Act, Act of Enablement, Enablement Act. Law to remedy the distress of the people in the Reich. That refers to the corporation. The Reichstag has enacted the following law, which is hereby proclaimed with the asset of the Reichsrat, and having been established that the requirements for a constitutional amendment have been fulfilled. Article 1. Now, each article, of course, is an article of association, incorporation. In addition to the procedure prescribed by the Constitution, laws of the Reich may also be enacted by the government of the Reich. This includes the laws referred to by Article 85, Paragraph 2, and Article 87 of the Constitution. Article 2, laws enacted by the government of the Reich may deviate from the Constitution as long as they do not affect the institution of the Reichstag and the Reichsrat. The rights of the president remain undisturbed. Now, are you hearing this and comparing it to each state constitution? An enablement act of enablement. Article 3, laws enacted by the Reich government shall be issued by the Chancellor and announced in the Reich Gazette. Oh, posting notices in the newspaper. It's familiar. They shall take effect on the day following the announcement unless they prescribe a different date. Articles 68 to 77 of the Constitution do not apply to laws enacted by the Reich government. Treaties of the Reich with foreign states, which relate to matters of the Reich legislation, shall, for the duration of the validity of these laws, not require the consent of the Reichstag. Well, of course not. That's the federal state versus the national state. A national state is each county and each state enabled to act under the federal programming, but it is not the federal state. And again, this is what you're looking at here. Treaties of the Reich with foreign states which relate to matters of Reich legislation shall, for the duration of the validity of these laws, not require the consent of the Reichstag. The Reich government shall adopt the necessary legislation to implement these agreements. Now, when we go over into the constitutions of the several states, we find that, for example, the Alabama Constitution was ensured by the Enabling Act of the Congress of the United States, 2nd March, 1819. That can be found in 3 Statute 489, authorizing formation of a state government and admission thereafter. So it was admitted to the Union, the perpetual Union that Congress came up with in the Articles of Confederation, Articles of Confederation, Articles of Agreement, Articles of Association, Articles of Incorporation. You see where this is going? Because in 1928, the Bear Corporation came into the world courts, who are governed by Congress. And it came in as the Republic of Germany. The Republic of Germany. And it said the Polish citizenry was a drag on the economy. It was too much overhead. And the court order said, yep, we're going to indemnify Poland. Well, then what happened after that is a whole bunch of citizens and public workers on public employ were killed. The majority of citizens, of course, were made refugee and sent to other countries to be product of those other countries, generate revenue into attorney coffers, to discharge the United States Congress, bankrupt states. In 1941, Congress got global governance with the Atlantic Charter. Congress is and has always been the New World Order. That thing is a criminal enterprise. A confederacy defined in Black's Law Dictionary maintains it is a criminal enterprise, otherwise known as conspiracy. When you have other states joining into and entering into a union with it, they are co-conspirators, co-defendants, criminal enterprise. And that's why you are faced with the option now of patronizing your own house and being the United States of being, lowercase, before you were capitalized upon by Congress, or you can be a product of a corporation, which is what a citizen would be if they were pledging allegiance to the United States of America, which is a chain of events. In the Articles of Confederation, quoted the United States of America as a style, S-T-I-L-E. That means it's a chain of events. It's not a geographical state. It's a bunch of congressional actions, chains of events. Now that thing has been found guilty of human trafficking. That thing has been found guilty by the evidence of genocide against the human race. And it is finally now being foreclosed upon. Now that thing is in California and Arizona at this time, asking for private donations from corporations to run its child protection services, its Department of Health and Human Services, because it lost its special drawing rights due to criminal enterprise, and it lost its access to the Treasury due to criminal enterprise. If you are a corporation or a citizen or any other donating to that criminal enterprise found already guilty by the evidence of genocide, you are aiding and abetting the known enemy of humankind, the punishment of which is death. Now, these things are not pleasant to hear. None of this is pleasant. I'm not here because I'm fluffy or flowery. I'm not going to blow smoke. That's what Congress does. It presentations. It dances around real pretty, just like every other attorney and court jester, by which to engage you and get your consent. Consent. Con means with. Sent means sending, of course. You're consenting to it. Don't patronize that thing. Patre means father. When you patronize something, you're calling it your father. You stand up there and you pledge allegiance under its flag, which is a pirate flag. Those stripes laying down say you're captured under them. You're captured under those bars. That stems all the way back to the British East Indian Trading Corporation. That is now the Department of Transportation, transporting you. This is all founded and stemming from commerce and navigation. You're being moved around as vessels, removed from your state of being, and taught you are something else. And part of this, the way that you are moved around, is through federal emergency management. FEMA, those emergency rules do not apply to roads or streets or trees or any other natural resource other than human beings. Go look at your state's emergency rules and you will find that's how you were captured. That's how you are institutionalized. By consent. If you consent to it protecting you, it can garner funding because you are asking it to protect you and be your daddy. All it has to do is prove that you've been harmed. Well, it's the one that harms you. That's fourth generation warfare, asymmetrical warfare. Majority isn't felt. It's under low intensity conflict, and that it's in its name. You don't know you're in a war. All of these actors and agents and these CPS workers and social workers and judges and attorneys, they're maintaining a war against you. It's just real quiet and nice. Feels good, and you get to pay for it. You got those 3-6 inches of court documents. You got 2 feet of court documents. One guy, years ago, he bought himself a casket and filled up a casket with his court documents. So 6 feet of court documents. All that money. Oh, what a presentation. What do you get for that? Absolutely nothing. And you expended, I don't know what it costs for the casket, but, you know, a place to store all those documents, you know, is quite expensive. Who kills the trees? Attorneys. This is nothing. They do nothing but count human beings all day long and facilitate all of these words and documents and killing trees and harming the environment. These attorneys are, breathing my air. I think we've got Bo with us. Bo, are you up there?
Yes, how are you doing today?
Good, awesome. How are you?
Great.
Good. Have you been listening?
Yeah. Yeah, especially like the stuff about the enablement material, because that is foundationally instrumental in understanding how this thing is a corporate structure, not the Act of 1871 or the Organic Act, which was just another act of enablement. But, these original acts starting in 1802, I mean, you can go right to Wiki and see the Articles of Association, the Articles of Incorporation, and see the elements, and you see the basic elements here in the Enablement Acts.
Right, and I'll bring that one up too, because I forgot to do that one.
And I'm glad you're talking 1933 Enablement Act under Hitler, because that is also foundationally important to understand, how close to that situation we've been, since before Hitler's time.
Absolutely. It wasn't Hitler who developed the eugenics programs. It was actually Margaret Sanger who founded Planned Parenthood here. Planned Parenthood was part of the eugenics program.
Yes.
And Hitler just facilitated policy. He was a mouthpiece, clergy for Congress. He just did his job. And he made it appear like, it had something to do with racism and the civil unrest, just like the CIA is presenting in Syria and everywhere else at this time. It's always the same show, always the same presentation. Hey, look over there, look over there, don't look over here, look over there. There's something else going on as, Hitler burns his own buildings down, or CIA burns his buildings down for him and points the finger over at Hitler and yada yada. I mean, it's always the same. Pol Pot in Cambodia and Vietnam, Korea, Japan, every one of them. They're always the same presentation to get everybody to buy into it and polarize from each other, separate from each other, and allow and consent to the deaths of our brothers and sisters. It's sick.
Good Congress, bad Congress. They play against themselves the whole time, thinking it's something different than itself, but it's still Congress.
It's still Congress. You brought up the 1802 Indemnification Convention, and everybody needs to realize that to be indemnified means that you've taken on the obligation of the debt or whatever you've been indemnified to do. And in the 1802 Indemnification Convention between Spain and the United States, that's the Department of Transportation, of course. It was after the British East Indian Trading Corporation that it was first Portugal won it, and then Spain won it, and then you still see the separation of Florida. It's cut in half. Half of it's with the Spanish Constitution, half of it's with the quote United States Constitution, but they have to have a ceded point. So Spain is sitting where Florida is, parking their butts there, so they have a claim of interest, which they really don't. We proved that in the case against them, but that was the whole point. Well, in this Indemnification Convention of 1802 is when they established the 5 overruling commission states. Each commission state, of course, commissions privateering. That's the letters of marque. They're the ones that maintain, well, this is what an officer of the law is, this is what it does, this is who it is, this is what it looks like, and it's just that letter. It's not a badge, it's not a flag waving or anything. It's letters on a piece of paper.
Okay, that's a different way to look at it, isn't it? That most people have been looking at it.
Right, description of writing. And that's where we go back all the way to the letters patent on the human being. They're describing you by that last name. Use of that family name, now you've become a new genus or species. Those are letters patent.
Ooh, letters patent. and this is probably where we need to clarify for some of these people following Patriot myths out there, because that's really where they got the easement into the human beings' bodies, as I see that. And this goes back to the 1600s, right?
Right. Well, even further back, because the separation of the spiritual and the temporal, it allowed the steward to pick up the lost soul at that time as well, and
right, and that's back in the 1100 era,
separation.
and so that's what allowed for this facilitation of the letters patent.
Right, because here's the bishops, and they're saying, okay, you stewards go out and protect humanity. Well, the sheriff at that time was protecting humanity. This is in 1100. By 1180, they had the House of Gellon come in, and in the Gallenhausen Charter, it maintains specifically, well, since humans don't have a very long memory, and they're not able to, focus much, we're just going to tell them a whole bunch of stories and see what sticks. In the same year, of course, you have 1180 and the Dialogue of the Exchequer. And here's the reason for the Gallenhausen Charter. Because if you're told a big story and you start patronizing that House of Gellon, you're an infant under the House of Gellon, so you can be held as the king's debtor. Now, that house is a king.
Yeah, so important to understand the Dialogue of the Exchequer, what it means for everything, this game we're playing. See the definition of hell, as we covered Thursday. The definition of hell out of the Black's Law Dictionary.
Right. I should go get that too, because it's very interesting. It'll take me a minute because I've got so many things open here, and I wasn't planning on.
Basically says that hell is the lower chamber of the Exchequer.
Right. I wanted to read it so that everybody can wrap their minds around it as well, because it's we were talking about the marshal last week, because the marshal is actually the steward of the lower chambers of the Exchequer, which means that he's basically what everyone would know as the devil, but he's really not the devil now that the attorney's the surety.
He's the attorney devil.
Yeah, it's the attorney devil. It's very interesting how they created this whole thing, and once you play the game, you play the game. You're the one moving the pieces around on the chessboard, and it feels good to be that being or states of being. And, we're having a lot of fun here and watching them, especially now. My favorite thing is to, years and years ago, I used to hate agents, and I used to hate these cockroaches all over the place. So then this last week, I've been watching these agents, and at the beginning of the week, I'm of course irritated by them and everything else. Then I realized what's going on. They are wailing. The merchants are wailing because we're not purchasing from them anymore.
Right.
And it's so beautiful.
And just at this time, you see a bunch of people hyping up Dean Clifford, who's still in jail, in his material, and it's just funny to me.
Yes, that's where I was being attacked, and then we had this false flag come in and everything else, and it's been so ridiculously funny because here he is. He was one false flag when he started, and then all of a sudden he jumps the boat and he's on another false flag, and he's on another one, and he's on another one, and I'm just like, you're known by your works and actions. And he's like, well, what is that? He basically said, well, read back at what you've already been. You've already evidenced yourself as a false flag and what you are. So, try to take that away, because it's already done. It's already done, and that's what Jesus had maintained. You're known by your works and actions. You've already done that. Now, there's no question about who you are. You're either marked by the beast or you're marked by God. There's two marks. So you already did it. What mark do you have? And at this point in time, this is why this is Revelation. Out of Black's Law Dictionary, first edition, 1891, the definition of hell is the name given to a place under the Exchequer chamber where the king's debtors were confined. And, again, last week we read the definition of martial, but I'm going to do that again as well so that everybody can see what the function of the martial actually is. And, for me, I'm having a lot of fun teaching now, more so than I've ever had in all of my time upon this earth, because of what has been happening. I mean, what did you see this week as to the chatter with the attorney and judicial arrests and things like this?
Just more arrests, more judges, which are really attorneys, on the hook, getting their estates raised. I had a big list from Wednesday. I never got a quarter of the way through it, really, but there's so many of them, I can't keep up with them right now.
That's what I was doing this last week, and then today I'm just not with it, I guess. Martial definition in Black's Law Dictionary, 1891, first edition. In Old English law, the title born of several officers of state and of law, of whom the most important were the following. Number 1, the Earl Marshal, who presided in the court of chivalry. Number 2, the Marshal of the King's House, or Knight Marshals, whose special authority was in the King's Palace to hear causes between members of the household and punish faults committed within the verge. Number 3, now remember that word verge too, because I'll try to touch on that if I remember later. Number 3, the Marshal of the King's Bench Prison, who had the custody of the jail. And number 4, my favorite, the Marshal of the Exchequer, who had the custody of the King's debtors. Number 5, the Marshal of the Judge of Assize, whose duty was to swear in the grand jury. Now, each session of court, each session of Congress is actually an assize. Okay, and in our case, we came in and facilitated the United States court, and it's been in session now for a while, and that is a session of the assize. It's just a different session. You have Clarendon, you have all sorts of the assize.
Their sessions were all about taking your stuff.
And taking human beings.
And taking human beings, right.
And our session is taking the psychopath and all of their stuff. That's an assize, so then... And
getting all the stuff back for the human beings.
Right. So actually the United States court, in its function, at its foundation, is the new Caesar, but the good Caesar. It's under public law. So that's the beauty of what the Exchequer is. It was never beautiful before, but I love it now. Just like I love FRNs. Those things are very, very nice now.
Yeah, I think all of these people releasing alternative pro se code pleading material and stuff right now is just to poison the well, to stop people from recognizing their authority.
Absolutely. And they have a lot of false flags out there. I mean, just this week they sentenced some sovereign citizens that were, they were acting as sovereign citizens. And that scares people from the word sovereign. But a sovereign state of being, a sovereign state is one adhering to the public law. A foreign state, by definition of 28 U.S.C. 97, you can find the definitions 28 U.S.C. subsection 1603, you'll find that the definition of a foreign state is one that's adhering to acts of commerce and private acts. Now, as to that, there is no sovereignty, absolutely no sovereignty if you're adhering to private acts and acts of commerce. And this follows through with the restrictive principle of sovereign immunity.
Yeah, and it's amazing they even acknowledge that in their own law, but...
Absolutely. And that was their failure. That was in 1974. They opened up a new form of market conditions so that they could sue each other under this Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act that allowed them to sue each other, and they were claiming to be sovereigns, but they were never acting under the public law.
Right. Yeah, I did a video on why Dean Clifford's still in jail, and I ran at... that 28 U.S.C. 1603 in the background, but
who knows if they'll read it.
Some people are just not getting it.
How is the chatter now? Are they still riding?
Oh, they still want to have private agreements.
Aww.
And, acting in, the private capacity, of course, which acting under foreign or, being a foreign state and under
Right.
private acts and acts of commerce, and there's no immunity there.
Absolutely. So you're always going to be administered as a private thing. That's what you're claiming as a private thing. Being a private thing, a res. That means thing. A resident is a thing of another. It belongs to that other, but it's a thing. It's not a being. And that's how they're getting you by nomenclature. If you're a thing, you're going to be a name thing. They own the name. They own the patent on those things. Those are concepts. Just like we've been teaching this week on gender, for example. Gender means stock, different species, different race at its etymology. So if you're claiming to be a female and a male, you're claiming to be a different race altogether than your brothers and sisters. And that's what Jesus was so adamant about when he was saying, look, you're all members of the same body. You're all of the same cloth. What are you doing separating yourselves and buying into these things? And you can see when he goes off on them for going into the court process, 1 Corinthians 6, he said you can only fornicate by giving your body to the Lord God. God has both raised up the Lord God, so shall he raise us up by his own power. Now, what is that word power? Power can only be vested. What happened with the Constitution? You vested your power in Congress. You're a transgressor.
Yeah. So important to understand. Can't say it enough. Congress means with transgression.
Absolutely. It's only a criminal enterprise. Only a criminal enterprise. That's what it is. That's what it was created to do. That's its function is a criminal enterprise. And
so you're going to go, round up the people and get a petition to these guys?
Right, or ask them, please administer me better.
I'm not getting administered by your administration good enough.
Yeah, I have nightmares about poor Rod Class. Here he is claiming to be a DC citizen, and what did he do in October? He pleaded guilty, and he's still harping on him, and calling him out. He's like, oh, I got an order that says they're administrating me. I got an order that says they're a corporation. Yes, then what?
I got some more paperwork.
And it was like years ago, we were laughing this week about, years ago, I bought into one of these little concepts, and, Jeff had played one of these processes and everything else. This is way back when, 2006, something like that. And he got into court and he says, I got the judge to run off the bench. Okay, first of all, you started to say, oh, well, they're abjuring the realm and all of these things. And of course they are, but they're still within those walls of the court, and you're still allowing administration. So then, and this is the part we were laughing about, because he's like, I got him to run off the bench. So I would share that story. He got him to run off the bench. And then what? Well, the case was still administered.
Yeah, they continue to be administered.
Right. But we were so proud of that years and years ago. We got a judge to run off the bench. Then what? Nothing happened. The case continues to be administrated. Everything ends up the same. And so you got to watch a presentation. You got to watch a play act. We got to experience that, and it was fun for a minute. And it turned our attention away from what they were actually doing, which is human trafficking and the action of genocide. And part of the action of genocide is removing children from one group to another. Now, when you're dealing with ex-wives and these things that are sick and disgusting, they are psychopaths. They are not of the human race. And so when the courts are involved and giving children to psychopaths, they are removing children from one group and giving it to another. And that is the definition of genocide. Right.
Yeah, some people just love genocide, I guess.
Right. And love renting their bodies. We're still seeing Craig Kirk, out there. You gotta get damaged. You gotta be damaged. You can't get any damage money if you're not damaged. I mean, this is ridiculous. Renting your body, that is prostitution. He is delivering them up. He is death. His name is death. Now, the definition out of Black's Law Dictionary, first edition, 1891, of confederacy. Okay, you know about the Articles of Confederation and all of these things that Congress was negotiating. In criminal law, the association or banding together of two or more persons for the purpose of committing an act or furthering an enterprise which is forbidden by law, or which the lawful in itself becomes unlawful when made the object of the confederacy. Conspiracy is a more technical term for this offense. The act of two or more who combine together to do any damage or injury to another or to do any unlawful act. For example, Craig Kirk is involved in a criminal enterprise known as confederacy, also known as conspiracy. You will be held accountable for your works. Now, the very last line of this definition of confederacy says, see federal government.
But maybe if we can get a petition together, they'll administrate us better.
Yeah, maybe we should go contact Congress and ask them if they can help us. You know, these things are ridiculous. Maybe we should claim to be sovereign citizens. You know, that's such a pet peeve of mine for these presentations to even be occurring.
Free man on the land, same thing.
Right. These are sovereign citizens. There's no such thing as a sovereign citizen. A citizen is always subject to the Constitution. You're filled up with something else. You consist of something else when you're filled up with another constitution. You're taking on somebody else's word. You're worshiping another lord. You're calling it your father. It's just sick. That is golden calf worship. It is idolatry. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I try to put that into context for people to get and see what they're doing, and then they come back and turn around and ask me, well, who should we vote for next time?
Yeah, maybe if you had another member of Congress in there, they wouldn't be your transgressor.
Oh, yeah.
You know, these things are sick. You got to get all of our listeners, you got to get in the mindset of reality now and not living in this cartoon land that's been provided to you by the law merchant. All of these concepts and designs are sold to you by the law merchant. And when you purchase those things, you're buying from the law merchant. When you stop contracting, and I know this is going to be hard for everybody to hear, but if you're patronizing that thing and you're filled up with that Constitution and you're paying homage to another Lord God there, you are the whore of Babel. And once you lice that contract, once you get away from that contract, abrogate that contract, walk away from it, what happens? It says in Revelation 18 that Babel falls and the law merchants go off running and wailing. They're all hurting because you're no longer purchasing these things. You're no longer running into court and giving them your assets. You're no longer running to the law merchant and buying anything from it. So it's not making any money. That's when Babel falls. And of course, in your case, you know, the good part, you know, was the quick claim. And do you want to explain the quick claim tonight after the break? I know we're coming up on break. But just the action of, you know, for especially for all the males to hear, you know, they're not alone, number one. Number two, most males have been attacked by some form of psychopath pretending to be married to him when in reality she's married to the state. And I'd like to cover the Exchequer aspect of the husband being responsible for her, because that's the bottom line. If she's not married to you and she's off, you know, fornicating with the state as a whore of Babel, you're not responsible for her. Not in any way, shape, or form. And those are the rules of the Exchequer. Her husband's responsible for her.
Yeah, well, that's certainly a good aspect that came, you know, was put into that case. I mean, I wouldn't say that it was a result of that case, but we all evidenced it up by putting it in the case. And I don't know, maybe there's some other things that we can hit on, some of the highlights, important things that did come out of this case for the people that haven't read it and or don't want to read. Maybe this will get them interested enough to go read the case, because it's everywhere. I put it in most of the Bo and Rocco videos and the pull down links, my YouTube videos, where they can go get those documents, read them for themselves. I read the whole genocide order on air and made a presentation for my YouTubers on that.
And we'll be right back, folks. Stick around. Hi, and welcome back to the second hour of Leaving the Farm right here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps. We are a listener-supported radio station. If you'd like to donate, please visit us at www.freedomslips.com and click on our listener support pages. Visit our store, join us in chat, whatever you feel like. It's an amazing site. Weisenberg, he's an amazing tech there, and Hawk is, we're so thankful for Hawk for keeping us on the air. We're thankful for you, the listener, for keeping us on the air, and it promises to be a much better experience this year as well, listening experience, as Hawk has invested a lot into the T3 line and other upgrades that should, make us just amazing. Thank you for everything that you've helped us with, Hawk, and our listeners. Without you, we would not be here. And we're back again, of course, with Bo. And during the break, we were kind of glancing around, and I forgot about the probation officer in Montana this week on utsandiego.com. Former probation officer charged in sexting, Missoula, Montana. A former juvenile probation officer in northwestern Montana was among 7 suspects recently charged for allegedly responding to an online ad in which a woman was purportedly willing to make a 12-year-old girl available for sexual encounters. James Stewart Myers, 54, of Superior, was arrested on December 18th on felony child sex abuse charges after prosecutors say he gave $100 to an undercover detective as prepayment for the encounter. These are the folks you're patronizing. This is the thing you're being patriotic to. The thing that's taking your children and buying and selling them online through ads. This is what you're patronizing. You're patronizing a predator, and you're allowing it to guard the hen house. And that's sick.
Yeah, and the probate courts themselves are just so ungodly, unlawful on their face that I don't even know where to start with that.
Right, and if you go back into the definitions, you find out that indeed the action of probate is that interpleading into your estate before the heir can pop its head in there and say, hey, look, I'm the heir. Here's an interpleader, and that is probate. That's the action of abatement of a freehold. Before the heir comes in, you got probation, and that's what's been happening. You've been held attainted. And, you go all the way back to your original diagnosis. What happens when you're birthed here? Your diagnosis is born. They're taking loans out to repair your vessel. These are the actions of bottomry bonds. And in doing so, they're charging the estate to take care of you, the body. Now, that's your estate. You're the one that has to pay for them to take care of the body when they harm the body. They're the thing that's harming you. They're the things that's preying on you and implicating all of these forces upon you. I urge everybody to go study 4th generation warfare, asymmetrical warfare, low-intensity conflict, and specifically winning hearts and minds, because that's what's occurring. You have all this force upon you, and then the same thing, the same entity that's attacking you and waging a war against you is offering you stipends, welfare benefits, Social Security, food stamps, food banks. That's the action of winning hearts and minds. That's getting your consent, garnering your consent. When you go back to the implication of the Office of Population Affairs, the OPA, you can find that at opa.gov. You'll find that that is the Department of Health and Human Services. Now, what's important for our listeners to realize is that the Office of Population Affairs was implemented by Henry Kissinger back in 1975, following his Memorandum 200 to the National Security Council in 1974, asking for a depopulation program. And that's what that is. The Department of Social and Health Services is the Office of Population Affairs. Its design is a depopulation program based on his recommendations. His Memorandum 200 to the National Security Council maintained that depopulation should be the highest priority of all foreign policy. Foreign policy, foreign communications, CFR, all of these things, that means communication between two states, two foreign states. So foreign policy, depopulation should be the highest priority of all foreign policy. That means the communication between your county and the county next to you. Those are foreign nations. Those are foreign states. The United Nations is all of these counties in combination. The United Nations is all of these foreign nations in combination perpetrating these crimes against you. They are in action of confederacy. Please stop patronizing it. You wanted to touch on that. There was something that you sent me the other day on YouTube on Roseanne Barr.
Oh, well, yeah, Roseanne Barr was on Russia Today, where she stated her candidacy for the president and talking some, about 30% of it was good, reprogramming for the sheeple, and about 70% of it was just propaganda, I thought. Did you see that?
Yes, and it looks like she's trying to get away from culpability, because if you go back to media theory itself and the Roseanne show, she was promoting the, homosexual agenda. Now, I'll stop there because I don't want anybody to think that I'm homophobic. The homosexual agenda was to decrease breeding, to decrease the fees in a fiefdom breeding. Okay, I'm not against homosexuals. I'm not against transgender or any other. I'm against the homosexual agenda that's perpetrating this and pushing this on children, and those that are not biologically homosexual are being prompted into homosexual behavior and other sexualized behavior that's abnormal to human behavior, based on all of these concepts. So they're garnering these relationships, looking at each other as their objects rather than entering into loving relationships based on equality. And that's something that a lot of people do not see. I know so many homosexuals that love each other and they care for each other and they take care of each other. So they're in the action of marriage. They're actually caring for each other. And then on the flip side, you have a new concept being created by this agenda where children are being engineered to go after somebody for their looks. They want a piece of tail. They want money. They want title. They want, they're following the political agenda. And that's so disgusting for me. So you go back to Roseanne and you see all of these presentations that she put on. She didn't like her kids. She was very neglectful, dowry housewife mentality, all of these different issues. And then to watch that YouTube, I was like, oh my gosh, here she is. She's trying to say that she's not guilty of perpetrating an agenda. That was full-on indoctrination. Then she says she's a truther. And she, while she was reading her cue cards, I was laughing, Yeah,
she kept looking down. She was either ashamed or reading her cue cards or some of both.
Right, and that's what it looked like. And then, from left field, she says she tries to humanize herself and say, I'm one of you. And that was very interesting because here's a multimillionaire actress saying that she's one of the humans. And the accountability comes with her level of knowledge, and she will be held accountable for her works. So if she had an agenda to promote, she will be held accountable. If she didn't, if she was an innocent actress, which is unlikely because of the concept and the maintenance of these CIA productions, it's not likely that she's innocent. If you watched her in the past, she's actually promoted patriotism. Remember when she sang the national anthem and she screeched it out and ruined it, and everybody was nuts, and it invited patriotism, and that's what the CIA does. It presents presentations to invite patriotism. So they're gonna tap on people and raise their ire, and then all of a sudden, no, you can't go against our government like that, and so she will be held accountable for her works.
All these different angles and presentations to suck people in, any way they can garner their consent.
Absolutely. Her singing the national anthem like that is a lesser key or lesser known, but it's the same concept as 9/11.
They're going to be doing the same thing here pretty soon with the Super Bowl and, these actors.
Right.
I mean, what are they? They are actors.
Right.
Okay. I mean, do I really need to even go into that? But
you remember what 9/11 did. It generated and promoted patriotism. Oh my gosh, somebody's attacked us. It was their own country that had attacked them, just like it's always been. It was designed and maintained by Congress, of course, and everybody knows this. It's all out there.
And then it garnered the consent for the Patriot Act.
Right. And that was her function way back when, and she facilitated her function. And for me, watching that latest YouTube from RT on Roseanne Barr, it looked like she was trying to garner sympathy. I'm sorry for what I've done. I'm really not the bad guy. No, everybody's a bad guy that's promoting this thing and engineering a society that believes in it to the extent that it does.
And to show you that they're being held accountable right now, just recently, David Cassidy got picked up for DUI in, California there.
They've got to redistribute these folks. That's what it's all about. They don't have any funding, so they're going to have to go after the rich, famous.
Yeah, garner their, bodies as the surety.
Yep, that's where all the money's at. And, there's even more in attorneys. Just to make everyone aware, there's even more money in attorneys.
Now, the only kinds of court cases that we should start to see in these courts are where, indeed, if someone has harmed a human being or murdered a human being, those people need to be held accountable no matter who you are. That's just the restrictive principle of sovereign immunity applies to everybody. And, then all the rest of it should be more and more of these judges and attorneys and doctors and agents, just, as per the agreed entry, with Northern Holding Corporation, formerly Northern Holding and Trust. They've been holding the human beings as surety since 1929 Geneva Convention.
Right, and we were touching on that too. The Department of Justice nailed a female psychopath with drug charges and murder charges as well, and we applaud that.
Yay! All right, good job.
Yeah. No more of these females getting off on lesser counts or claiming that they were forced into it or whatever else. She had her free will. She used it. Now it's time for accountability. And that's in the... you can find that Manhattan U.S. Attorney charges member of Bronx Narcotics Organization with murder. I like how they use that because, as you know, each municipality is entered into these drug cartels. Cartel means little charter. And, of course, on that aspect, she would be undercutting them and taking their financial resources under 27 CFR 72.11 crimes against the laws of revenue. And but on the murder charge, that's good to see. And I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see that they're redistributing her in every way possible, because that's what the psychopath is bred to do. She is the whore that will maintain the whore. She has to stay the whore because she is now the product. The psychopath is now the surety, along with the attorney and other fictional characters. Now the psychopath has no idea who they are. They're not a state of being. They have no frontal lobe. And they are to be removed from ability to harm. Bottom line.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank goodness this is hopefully in time. I mean, we've let so much occur, and, you know, I mean, it's hard to tell exactly what's going on without our own boots on the ground, like with Fukushima and the Gulf oil disaster, although I do have some firsthand testimony about the Gulf and the Corexit 9500 and, you know, the kind of bad state the Gulf is in right now, but the Atlantic Ocean being contaminated by Fukushima radiation is going to affect a global population. My, you know, thinking is to remain open on the subject until we can get some actual boots on the ground and see exactly for ourselves, not just taking the media's word for it, or lack of media, because that in itself could be a double psyops in itself.
Absolutely. Kind of like what BP's doing now. BP's coming on, this is from Reuters.com. BP appeal to stop, quote, fictitious U.S. oil spill claims fails. So BP is saying that part of those claims are fictitious. They don't want to be held accountable. Now, wait, back up just a little bit, because I want everybody to realize what is and what is not. So here's a corporation that taps into oil on the bottom of a seabed and creates such an exorbitant amount of damage upon the environment. Okay, at that time, BP squeezed the populace. It was a shakedown. So BP came in and said, we're losing 100,000 barrels of oil per day. Wait a second. That stuff was just found. How are you losing anything? Now, under that fictional concept, they squeezed everybody, increased the price of oil, and everybody needs to realize that BP and the government now pit up against each other. It's the same entity. That is your corporate government. It's the same entity holding itself accountable and attempting to cash in at your expense. They're saying, the government is coming in and saying, we're protecting human beings from BP. BP saying, we're being picked on by the government. BP is your government.
Yeah.
And at the outset of that, in years past anyway, at the outset of that, no citizen is ever paid. No thing is ever cleaned up. And it's all laid on the backs of citizens and the tax base to the same corporate government. So you've got this presentation inside of a presentation inside of a presentation going on, with BP whining and crying that it shouldn't be held accountable or whatever. BP is held accountable now. They are the corporate government. They are the CFR, members of the CFR. These folks are members of the Association of Corporate Counsel. And this is not going to be tolerated. Now, this is the second one this week that I've seen come across that falls outside of public law. And the first one was actually a prosecuting attorney and corporations in an area coming up and suing and maintaining that they're the victims of a financial schematic, financial crimes. Now, that prosecuting attorney is going to be held accountable under public law, of course. But to watch this attempt was very ballsy from my point of view, because they've lost all of their funding, so now they're trying to come in as victims, and it's in everybody's face, because in years past, prosecuting attorney would come in on behalf of the people or on behalf of the state and prosecute somebody and charge their estate to discharge congressional bankruptcy. Sorry, I'm losing my voice again. And it was all hidden by court process. And here's this ballsy prosecuting attorney now coming in and saying he's the victim specifically, and that's not going to fly with the United States court. So you have a sure bet that you're going to be held accountable really soon, really, really soon. These things, but that is, I mean, it's so blatant to see, because everybody else is adhering to the public law. So all of the chatter on all these mainstream news outlets and media, we're watching this, and public law, commercial acts of commerce, or private acts of commerce. And it's so funny to see, because at this point in time, it's so blatant. It's like a loud, here I am, come and get me kind of thing that's going on now when they do attempt to go outside of public law. It's interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. This is certainly interesting times to be living in. It's exciting, got to look at embrace the good stuff that is going on, and keep in mind that we did this all in an attempt to give humanity some hope here, because Congress hasn't given you any. Congress says, yeah, we'll protect you with more Patriot Acts and NDAA and all the rest of it, right?
Absolutely. That's what it does. It protects you to death, from cradle to grave.
Now, they're already hyping up this State of the Union address that Obama's going to give, and, Obama's going to, I forget what he's even espousing now. I'll go look that back up. But it's all a plea. As we covered Wednesday night, we were talking about this on the Bo and Rocco show. It's a plea to the House of Lords for the funding so they can do this stuff to us.
Absolutely. And what are they going to get? Absolutely nothing. Because that's what Caesar gets in the end. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's. And Caesar's lost all of their special drawing rights. They've lost their access to the treasury. That Caesar now is asking for private donations, which of course is aiding and abetting the known enemy of mankind. And it's very interesting to watch and to see, these stories. That prosecuting attorney and now BP. This is the law merchant wailing. It's screaming, crying, because it's so lost. It doesn't have anything left. And it's finding it hard to swallow when it has to cannibalize its own peers. But that's the way this works. That's the way it's going to go. That's the way it will go. And it's so profound to me to be witness during this time.
Yep, it certainly is.
The cats are my gratifying agent tonight, I guess. Thus far, that will accept concepts, that'll take upon them concepts and notions and fictional, able to be taught sign language, and can then sign emotional states of being. So they are able to take up concepts of I'm sad or I hurt or whatever else. Those are concepts, and we need to realize these things so that we're not impeded as to our motion. A body in motion stays in motion. Emotion is founded upon it's actually a form of light or unlight or epsilon. It's the stopping point or the ohm.
Right. E is epsilon, which means stop.
Yeah, stop. It's a resistance, a form of resistance.
And motion, of course, we know what motion is. So
I react in a natural manner when something hurts. I'll automatically, evidence is in a reactive manner, crying or whatever else, or exclamation, or you can read it on somebody's face how they're feeling. You don't have to describe that into words. That is emotion. That is stopping you. So when you buy into that concept, you're in the past tense. You're not in the actual state of relative being. My state of relative being, if something hurts, I'm going to react right now. I'm not going to react later and talk about it and then talk about it some more and then, move further and further. You hurt my feelings. That's moving further and further and further outside of a state of being. And that's what the whole indoctrination experience is. It's moving you further and further outside of your state of being and stopping that motion.
Yeah, and of course, the attorney's trick in his game is always to get you to come in and defend title. That someone's hurt my feelings. I got to go back in there and set things right. And
absolutely. And
exactly what the attorneys want to hear.
And that's why they're so beneficial, because they don't have a self. They don't have a frontal lobe. The majority are psychopaths without the frontal lobe. That's why they're in that employ. That's what they do. They count. They're the one of the only known entities that are capable of viewing a human being as an object, something to count, something for their benefit. And in that, they have to have an engineered or a biological product by which to extrapolate. And that's what we've seen all of these years until now, when humanity realizes its own state of being, that it is a state of being. It's not a thing, it's being. It's not thinking about being. It doesn't want to be at some future date and time. It doesn't think it ought to be or should be or could be or would be, like they're taught through this pedagogy, which is attendance on boys, removal of the firstborn son. A state of being already is. And going back to, we were talking about this earlier in chat, and a state of being is. Okay, so if you are a psychopath, you're already a psychopath. You've already evidenced your mark. God already is. If you're acting and walking and talking as God, you've already evidenced your mark. And that's what the game is all about. That is what the Exchequer is. Putting that mark of the beast inside of hell. And that's what is happening now. That is the eternal pits. There's so many metaphors for the lower chambers of the Exchequer or hell. And bottom line, it's title. It's title. You're in hell if you're taking up a title. I want to be a good dad. I want to prove to you I'm a good mom. I want to prove to you I'm a good citizen. I want to prove to you I'm a good grandma. I want to prove to you that I'm a good person. I want to prove to you that I'm this or this. I'm a doctor. I'm a teacher. I'm whatever. You're in hell. And you're trying to claw your way out of hell by seeking title, when in reality you already are. So stop being in hell. Attorneys belong in hell. Psychopaths belong in hell. They do not have a frontal lobe. They cannot conceive of the self. They cannot look or view another human being as anything other than an object. That thing, it is a thing, belongs in hell. That is a fictional creation. That is the only thing that belongs in hell. Human being is not in hell. It is not a debtor. A child is not a debtor. Psychopath is somebody who's depraved, somebody who's bankrupt, morally, absolutely gone, bankrupt, depraved. Sin means, the word literally means without. They're without. That thing belongs in hell. Human being has no place being in hell, and that's what this case was all about. That's what the foundation of everything we've ever done is bringing human being out of hell and putting the right entity in there.
Yeah, I know I got people out there that are just yanking my chains when, they come on to my YouTubes and say, well, you're just nuts. You need to go listen to Winston Shrout. No, I'm trying to get out of hell. So, I've been there with Winston Shrout and Gene Keating and all these quote unquote gurus that are just delivering you back into the system that is the cause of all this misery.
Right, and I forgot to touch on this on Thursday when we brought up, you had brought up Winston Shrout. I've had contact with Winston Shrout, and I think that he may be possibly one of the innocents that are patronizing that thing, that it's finally getting out, because in the last few months especially, he's been sending a lot of people our way as well. So he's finally coming around and learning, and I'm glad to see this. And again, when I spoke to him before, he had an amazing energy. I like his energy. I think that he's just, probably a lot stuck in his ways, which of course we've seen people like that. But again, he's been sending people our way. So I think that he's coming around and at this point in time, I don't think he's an agent. I think that, he is an innocent, and, because he is, I've spoken to him, and I've
Wow, I didn't know that. I mean, and it's not like I didn't enjoy his presentations back in the day, and it's very interesting things to point out about the IRS and all the rest of it, and learning the United States Code or the UCC, but we don't want to claim any of those things. I mean,
No.
Except for it applies back on the fiction. The fiction wants to claim those things. Okay, there's your God. There's your Lord God. And, you're going to be administrated accordingly.
Right, and that's where we go back to the Exchequer with the husband being accountable. That's how they make that revenue to pay us back. And everybody needs to realize that. Now, I don't want to see a whole bunch of citizen sheeple being held accountable for their debt. And that's why we're here. Get out of that system, because it's coming for you. They have been adjudicated to have been perpetrating genocide and human trafficking against the human race. And in that judgment, the bonds are laid down for over $150 trillion. That's lawful dollars on behalf of humanity. Now, if you're patronizing it and you're loving that thing, it's going to use you to offset its bankrupt state.
Right, which you can read for yourself on the judge's oath, 28 U.S.C. 453. Look up the terminology with the Black's Law Dictionary, because that's their language. So many people say, well, you need to quit, using their language. Well, no, you got to speak to them in the language they understand. You got to understand what they're saying to you.
Absolutely, and those are false prophets. Those are also priests, and I've watched some of those come through that'll say, don't use their language. No. Jesus said, don't use their law. Jesus said, don't use their law. And that's when he went off on Peter. He said, get thee behind me, Satan. You're my adversary, because you're teaching and you're promoting and you're using their law. And again, go back to 1 Corinthians 13. How dare you go in front of them?
Yeah, we don't want to understand their language as so much as we want to comprehend what is being said and how we can speak to them so they understand.
Absolutely. And they have understood us. That was in the Genocide doc. And sorry, it was 1 Corinthians 6, not 1 Corinthians 13. 1 Corinthians 6 is when Jesus goes off on them for going in front of them, participating in the Church of Baal there, the court system, going in front of the unbelievers, yada yada. And at that point in time, he had said, you can only fornicate by giving your body to the Lord God. He said, fornication is but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. And that's exactly what he meant. Don't put your body in that court. Do not subscribe or underwrite policy do not understand anything.
Someone asked me if they thought they should file a habeas corpus for Dean Clifford.
Oh my gosh.
And the habeas corpus just means that here's the body.
Yeah,
there you go.
Habeas, it's have. Corpus is the body. It means have my body. That's what a habeas corpus is. It's saying this court doesn't have jurisdiction. This court has jurisdiction. You're saying you have jurisdiction over my body. And it was the same thing that Curtis Kallenbach did with the quitclaim that he was doing. It says, okay, I'm lost. Take me, I'm yours. I'm lost at sea. You got to find me now. Salvage me as a lost vessel. Diagnose me and charge my estate for my repair. Come on, take me. That's sick. These people are sick.
Yeah, and Curtis was getting people to quit claim themselves. Okay, now if you quit claim yourself, you just open up the door for Congress to come in and run a salvage operation on you.
Absolutely. It's the same thing as when you lost the birth certificate. So what's the point of that? Other than, and you need to hear this and hear it very clearly, because once you've quitclaimed yourself, you've given up any and all interest in that estate. The estate, that includes your heirs, that is known as estoppel by assignor. You're the assignor. You're assigning that vessel on to somebody else. And so in the case of Phil's case, Curtis Kallenbach quitclaimed Phil when Phil went into jail under his actions there last year. And we had to get somebody to come in and salvage Phil from his family. You know, you cannot do these things. You have to know what these things are.
And he got out of jail right after that.
Right, but he still sat in there 73 days.
I know.
You know, because of Curtis Kallenbach.
Yeah, this is how these people help. They help out by, getting you in jail.
Right. Now I want and to follow through on that one. Now Phil is Ryan and Adam's dad. Phil is Chadwick Sterling's dad. Now recently Chadwick Sterling was attempted on by privateers. You can find that audio on our YouTube. Attempts on a United States vessel is on Bo Entertainment. Go there, because it explains exactly what happens if you are of your own house. Chadwick Sterling was not arrested. The vessel that he was traveling in was not impounded. He doesn't have a license. He's not a citizen of the United States Incorporated. He's not a citizen of the United States of America, which is a style or chain of events. And Chadwick is fine.
Yeah, he was under the ordinance of the estates.
Absolutely.
Under the same estate Phil's under now.
Absolutely. It's same executor. And we were able to pull him back out after Curtis Kallenbach quitclaimed him. So there is a way to protect people after if you've done Curtis Kallenbach's quitclaim. There is a way to get away from that, but you have to subscribe to somebody else's authority. Which the good part about the Jonason estate was that it's still in the estate. Now I would recommend and advise that you know somebody before you enter into their estate. And it's the same vice versa. Because Curtis Kallenbach, at that time when he quitclaimed Phil, was Phil's executor. And that's how he got away with doing that. He will be held accountable at a later date. That's when I circle back, because that, right now Phil's okay. Everything's okay. But what Curtis Kallenbach did was actually executor de tort. He's the administrator of his own wrong. He knew that was wrong, and with intent, he did it. And so there is accountability for him at a later date. We're just dealing with we're backlogged like you wouldn't believe, but you can bet that he will be held accountable for that, for perpetrating those things. And on the others, he quitclaimed Vera, and Vera was in and out of jail 8 times, the last thing I heard, but she was still following him, so I couldn't help her. And I haven't heard from her in months now, so I'm not sure exactly where she's at or what happened to her since then because of Curtis Kallenbach. So again, All of these things will be taken care of, and he will be held accountable for these things. They're sick.
Now, Rocco and I came up with a good application for the quit claim, and that was to get these easements or adhesion contracts of our exes off of us.
Right. And that's something that's beautiful to me, because that's the directives in Revelation. Okay, you have to get rid of the whore of Babylon. You can't cater it, can't coddle to it, you don't bow down to it, and you sure as heck don't take its responsibility and wrap it around your neck. You give it back to the thing that's creating the liability. She's creating that liability. And she's creating that liability at the behest of her Lord God, which is the state. So once you quit claim her, you put her back on the state. You say, no, okay, you have her back. I mistakenly entered into a marriage contract with you, the state, and her at one time. And here she was raising me at your behest. Now you take her. You're responsible for that thing. And I think that's the most beautiful document that we have, in my personal opinion, because of her egregious actions against humanity, her ways, and what she is. She's just foul. She's preyed on us. She's allowed the predation on females, children, and males, and maintained the male as a perpetual servant for long enough. It's done now, and she will be held accountable for her works, because once her husband, the state, is made accountable for her actions, it's going to come after her to get that money back. It's not going to pay for her. It doesn't like her. All this time, it's been using her as a useful idiot, and she's been going along with the game and everything else. It doesn't like it when she's no longer a benefit. So you can bet that she's going to be having a fun time in a hospital setting or an institutionalized setting in some way, mental health institution, criminal industry, medical industry, or whatever. But that was her choice. She acted within free will, and she is now going to be held accountable for her works. And that's what it's all about. That's what this is all about.
So I have a lot of people coming to me now and saying, well, what can we do for Dean? And, what can he do for himself? And I think he's going to have to ride this out, because I know he's not walking under the public law.
Right.
So, when he gets out, I'd be happy to speak to him. But, what could, somebody that does want to turn around, okay, I'm going to just...
Yeah, if you evidence your intent to not be with that thing, and you evidence it clearly by the evidence, by your works and actions, we can save you. I can pull you right out. But if you're evidencing that you're patronizing that thing, and you're accepting what it's doing to you, and you're evidencing that you're going to bite me if I try to do that, no way. I'm not going to help anybody who's not helping themselves. I'm not allowed to, because that liability becomes mine. And I'm not taking out the liability for somebody who's patronizing the Lord God. I can't. I don't speak that word. That would go against the public law.
Right. Well, he's evidencing a lot of things that they're doing to him while he's in there. I discussed why it is that they can get away with that, because he is still... claiming to be a man, and these things.
Self-appointed government or something, foreign state or whatever, private. He said he's evidenced himself as a private state or foreign state or whatever under the definitions of 28 U.S.C. subsection 1603, and so can't do anything for him. He's evidenced that he's a franchise.
Yeah, I would just say I'll put it out there to his followers when he gets out. Have him contact us if he so desires. I did try to contact him in the past on numerous occasions and exchanged a few Skype chats, but other than that, he didn't really want to make the time for my material. So.
Right, and we saw that with the actions of Rod Class. I tried to reach out to him for so long, because when I first met him, I thought he was a great guy. And then as he goes along, he keeps doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. And then he's promoting the same thing over and over again. And then it solidified in October when he pled guilty and continued on the same path. He pled guilty and is still telling his followers that, they should do this or this. He pled guilty. And he's also got an attorney there that made an appearance. There's a distinction between somebody adhering to the public law and somebody not adhering to the public law, and that's a prime example is Rod Class.
Right, and if you're claiming UCC or something like that for your status, you're evidencing yourself to be with that state,
right,
which is foreign to the public.
Right.
I think people are starting to ease off the UCC stuff because those actions in court have gone pretty much nowhere. That was created under the Negotiable Instruments Act.
Right, way back when it was the first it was called the law merchant. You can read this in Amateur 2D bills and notes. First it was the law merchant, and the law merchant went into the Negotiable Instrument Acts. And then when the Negotiable Instrument Acts were taken over, it was taken over by the Uniform Commercial Code itself. And that is the law merchant. That's the one selling you rights and benefits if you accept those titles. Are you a female today? Okay, you get this, 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 and this. Are you a male today? Yes, you get this, 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 and this. Are you white today? Yes, you get this, 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 and this. Are you black? This, 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 and this. Purple, red, yellow, this, this, this. And those are the rights and benefits that come with those concepts. But you're not the heir. You're purchasing a concept, and then you're purchasing more concepts, and more concepts, and more concepts. That is the definition of Blackacre. It's a fictional creation. It's a fictional creation. That's how you are hypothecated. You're claiming to be a fiction. A franchise of the United States Incorporated. Fiction. And you're adhering to a fictional government. Here you have the House of Delegates, which is the lower chambers of the House of Representatives, with full-on administrative control over the Bar Association. So where's the bar? And there's some useful idiots out there that just said England. Come on. The bar is under Congress. Congress. One of the first clergy members for Congress that were promoting the bar was Lincoln, President Lincoln. Clergy for Congress. The voice of Congress. Clergy. Now, I'll stop right there. He was a credit reporter for Dun & Bradstreet, by the way. Just as much as Taft and two other presidents. But the thing is that you have to realize that clergy means the voice of something. The voice of whatever it's patronizing. Representative means it represents the voice of something or represents the voice of something. And so in your own house, your house members are your clergy if they're speaking your word. They're not your representative. They don't represent your word. We don't represent your word. That's the bottom line. Don't be represented. Stop choosing to be seen in a different way. We were talking about respect on Thursday. Respect. Seen again in a different way. Represented. Presented again in a different way. Let me tell you what you are.
It's kind of like, these people that claim that, the Constitution replaced the Articles of Confederation.
Yeah, where did it put them?
Yeah. Just left it on the table. It just put it in a different spot, that's all.
And the Articles of Confederation, also, it was reiterated in the League of Nations Covenant in 1924, by the way. That was annexed to the League of Nations Covenant. Of course, these contracts are being signed on the high seas.
Yeah.
High contracting parties. They weren't smoking pot. They were on the high seas, contracting with each other. And when you go look up at the word league, it is a synonym for confederacy. Just as much as the I just dropped it. General Council is the synonym for ecumenical council. It's the same exact thing. It's just a different word usage. So you've got the same process over and over and over and over again throughout history. History always repeated itself up until now. This is the turning point. But you have to turn. And that's something that's
now
so
or
profound.
never.
Yes, it's now or never. In those bonds, I have to reiterate that there is a bounty against the attorney. Now, an attorney is also somebody who's paying homage to another Lord God. So just to let everybody know, you're up for grabs if you're a psychopath. And part of that is because you're an attorney. You are termed. You are an adversary of another. And that's something that everybody needs to go look through the etymology on Satan. Satan means your adversary. Bottom line, it's not very hard. It's simple. Your adversary is Satan. That just means somebody who's adversarial to you, who'd rather harm you and benefit off of your demise than look at you, and these things it's just profound. And, we want to give a shout out to the House of Lords too, because that's been an amazing, this has been an amazing.
They are the keepers of the ecclesiastical law, the true ecclesiastical law, not the ecclesiastical law that's been usurped by the law merchants.
Yeah, it was beautiful this week to watch the legislation in the House of Lords, and somebody brought some commercial law to the table, and they said, nope, we're not having none of that. We're going to stick with public law, and
that's awesome.
It is. It's been beautiful, and give a shout out to the House of Lords, because now we're back to where we should be. The stewards are at the helm. Sheriff means steward. That's the keeper of humanity. That's all there was way back when. Is this a sheriff in the county? He protected everybody, and with the treasury funds. And there were no courts. There were no legislators. There were no attorneys in the middle of your kingdom shutting it up with law, which that word, when you go back, literally means to lay down. The resurrection is just the opposite of law, to stand up again. That's all it is. This is very simple. It's not complicated. And Satan isn't that big. It's just the thing that's against you, and now it's being held accountable, and it's wailing. And that's the most beautiful thing. It's all beautiful, but